And I Googled the registration number, and it told me it was Coast Guard. So
it sounds like there's actually one approaching.
does.
It says Sikorsky UH-60 Black Hawk. 4,000 feet. It's pretty noisy. I can hear it already.
Yeah. Why are Black Hawks flying on up here?
Why are they?
Things are getting interesting globally.
Yeah.
Threat's real.
Well, sometimes, last summer you could tell that the Coast Guard was flying a lot between here or Bellingham and like Anacortes area or Whidbey down in there. And they were flying really low all the time, just across the island. And they seem to be just going back and forth. I haven't noticed that so much this summer. They've been more like they're on some sort of mission. They're moving around, they're doing loops and stuff. But that one, I don't know if it's the same one you're talking about, Dave, but there was one that went, I got a picture of it actually over my place because it was so low. And
was it red?
No, it was
Okay.
dark.
Okay.
And it went
That might
down
have
your
been
direction, and and I could hear it, and I could and then it just sort of seemed to vanish. Like it didn't like drift away. It just seemed to be like, I actually wondered if it landed up at Aston because it seemed like it just got quiet all of a sudden.
It turned on its cloaking technology, probably, Kathleen. What happened?
It's shield.
Last summer, we had 20,000 Chinese national troops over on Salt Lake Island, over on the Canadian side. Remember, we had all those Chinese troops on in there, and they left a variety of different things on up that way as well. So if you did not follow that, there were about 250,000 Chinese troops from Vancouver up along the coast, over on Vancouver Island, Salt Lake Island, a variety of others.
Really?
Yeah.
And why were they there?
They're there. They claim to be there to protect their interests in the port of Vancouver because of the shipping that they do to Vancouver. And Justin Trudeau decided, oh yeah, this is a good thing. Let's invite them on over for cold weather training that went on for about 8-9 months. The problem is the physical location of it. Things that we have target-wise on up in our local area, not far from here, are very strategic, so very disconcerting.
So when you say some of these these helicopters and such and planes are coming, are you seeing them on these flight trackers or what?
Yeah, some of them are on out there. I get some through ADSB, I get some through Skyglass, but mostly I have a dedicated group of, and I hate the term, but referred to as plane fags. Why they ever came up with that term years ago, I don't know, but I have a dedicated group that monitors both military and a variety of other odd cargo internationally. I too many years in the line of work I was in war rooms, command and control business. And as a result of that, you get hooked on the adrenaline, you become a junkie to it, and you pay attention to what's going on, watch butterfly wings flap here and hurricanes on over there.
Interesting.
Occupational hazard. Let's go ahead.
Yeah.
Do we have anybody else joining?
I think Lee's trying to get on. I keep watching. I don't want to forget that because I have to let him in, but
yeah, Lee's still working on it.
Okay. I don't know if anybody looked at the notes or if you have any feelings about it, if anybody had any changes or anything on that, if they looked okay to everybody. if you had time to look from last meeting. Let's see. Lee's got, I wanted to hear from him about a few things. Well, maybe Dave, have you been working on you were going to look at Island Air this month. Have you had the chance to do that?
Yeah. Would you like another brief PowerPoint presentation?
Alan?
No. Yeah, wrong meeting. Lee said he's still having trouble. He's
Okay.
getting the invalid link stuff.
Oh, do I need to resend it to him or something?
No, his
Okay.
iPhone's not really. Anyway,
Okay.
his computer it went wacko.
Okay.
So he said that the only thing he really had to contribute was the information that he sent.
Right.
And the main thing that I wanted to say was the because you had on an agenda item for
Yeah.
the
Software.
for the software. And let me see if I can get out of, and I'll tell you what. So the flight radar 24
Yeah.
software.
Yeah.
Look, let me make sure I'm muted on the other one. Yes, I am. The flight software looks good. And I'm going to look at it more, but the sky glass is still unstable.
Okay.
No, that's really all I have to contribute at this point. If
Okay.
you need me for something specifically, holler at me.
Okay.
Okay, well, and I'm gonna hit you on this one real quick, is
Sure.
we keep talking about having a software. I've got ADSB, David, you're using ADSB, correct?
Yes.
And Catherine, you're using ADSB. The difference is anybody actually subscribed, or are we all using the free version?
I subscribe to the flight radar, but I've held off on the ADSB just until I knew what was happening here. So
I have the free version.
Yeah, I have the free too. And I have the free because I'm cheap.
Yeah, the ADSB, the subscription allows us to go back in history. So I would suggest
Can we get the ADSB?
And Flight Radar pulls their flight data from ADSB.
Yes.
So I'm saying,
Alan,
does look at just getting the ADSB subscription.
Does the historical data show you more than what we can see live? That is the flight path and the current altitude. Does it reconstruct altitude back along the flight path?
ADSB, I found a button on there that does that actually. Well, only for the flight that you're seeing. I haven't tried to do it retroactively. Is that what you're asking? Like to go back a day or something?
Actually either. So if I'm looking at a plane that I missed it, it's 4 miles off the shore of Lummi. There's a button I can click and it'll allow me to back up and get the elevation when it passed over.
I found it accidentally and then I turned it off so I'm going to have to play with mine again to see how I did that, and I'll let you know.
Okay, well, just knowing it's there,
that's
helpful. Because that's, as you'll learn in a minute, it's been one of my frustrations is, just missed it.
Yeah, I'll figure it out and send it to you.
Okay, that'd be cool.
I'll send that out.
Yeah. Okay. You want a little slideshow about
Sure.
Island Air?
Sure.
Okay. I'm going to, do I have permission to share my screen?
Well, if you don't, let me.
I could just try it, see what happens. Oh, no, you've disabled it.
I disabled it?
Yeah, you need to enable it.
Oh, multiple participants can share simultaneously.
Try that. There we go. Okay, let's see how this goes. Yeah, how about that?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, so shortly after the last meeting, I stopped monitoring San Juan Air second wind, and I focused on Island Air, which is also cannery leasing. And there are also 4 tail numbers that I've identified associated with this operation. Same number as San Juan Air, but they're much more elusive. I think in part because it's an air taxi service, no regularly scheduled flights, and it's out of Friday Harbor, not out of Bellingham. So they seem to, when I catch them randomly on ADSB, they're often flying some other intra-island route. They're flying to Orcas, or they're flying to Lopez, or they're doing something, not necessarily coming to Bellingham. So and then, as I mentioned, it seems like every day, at least once, I go, oh, there goes an Island Air flight, just missed it. And it's no longer anywhere near the island, and I'm hesitant to guess what its elevation was when it passed over us.
Mhm.
So it's a smaller data set, but I have done some work on this. Now you can see my notes there, can't you? Oh, there are no notes. So, no, actually you can't. I can. Are you seeing just the screen?
Yes,
Yeah.
Good, then it's working. So this slide kind of captures the dichotomy between San Juan Air and Island Air. This is not an unusual occurrence. Those 3 red circles, those are all 3 San Juan Air planes in the sky at one time.
Can you go to the
Here's-
next slide?
I'm sorry, it didn't go?
No,
no,
What do you see now?
just the first one.
Oh, come on, PowerPoint, what are you doing? Let me back up. Huh, that's weird.
you want to try slide?
There we go. There we go.
But do you see this, all the stuff around the margins, or just the slide?
The stuff around the margins.
Slide.
Can you click instead it looks like you're on home. If you go over to slideshow, which is about 6
Yeah.
tabs over. If you click on that.
That's what I did at the bottom here.
Oh,
So what do you see now?
well, up on the top, it looks just the second slide. It would just be bigger and cleaner, I think, if we could see just the slideshow.
Hold on, let me back up here. I'm going to stop share and then try to
Okay.
adjust something in PowerPoint here and see if I can fix it. Okay, now, yeah, this is hard to do.
Well, we can look at it the other way you had it. That's fine. It just,
Yeah. This is one of those little frustrations with I've run into with PowerPoint. It doesn't know what I want to do.
darn software.
Yeah. So anyway, let's see. Control this. Yeah. All right. Let's. Can you see an ADS map?
Yes.
Okay. And even if it has peripheral stuff around
Yeah,
it,
that's fine.
I can still make the point.
Yeah.
So what this slide shows is a typical, for me, at least it's a not unusual occurrence, but
Right.
those 3 red circles, those are all San Juan Air flights in the air at the same time.
Yep.
And last week I even caught all 4 of them in the air at the same time. And this just doesn't happen with Island Air. You know, I'm lucky to get a couple of flights a day, whereas back when I was hoarding San Juan data, I mean, I could get 5 data points, but before I'd finished my coffee if I wanted to. So anyway, it's just a smaller data set.
Mhm.
And this is what it looks like so far. I've only captured 26 flights. Minimum altitude was 950. The maximum is 2,500. average is sort of similar to San Juan. It's about 1,750, but you can see here it doesn't, no nice bell-shaped curve here. It's kind of a gamish. I have no idea. And these were, by the way, these are all clear days, no ceilings.
Right.
So I have no idea why this one chap flew at 950 feet one day, nor why these 3 flights are all up in the 2,500 foot range.
Is that is it consistently the same one? Because I've noticed one that goes over here that tends to be low.
I think 2 of those higher ones, at least over 2,000, were the same plane going to and from, in and out of Bellingham. Same plane, same pilot. But other than that, I rarely get the same plane twice. And, you know, I have tail number. I can sort it by tail number and see, but I'm not sure the pilots correspond to the tail
That's
numbers.
true.
They may rotate. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway, and this graph is, I'm not very happy with it, but I tried playing around with a bin width to see if it told more of a story, and it doesn't. So the standard deviation is high. I didn't even calculate the 95% confidence band because it really wouldn't mean anything with data like this. But in this case, 8 out of 26, so that's about a quarter of the flights are below 1,500 feet. And I used that last time as kind of a threshold of interest. And it was a much smaller percentage with, or it was a smaller percentage, I'll say, with San Juan Air. So it's not as robust a data set, but I think it gives us some clues, and I may just, you know, charge on and do another month and see if I get up to 50 or 60 data points, what we can learn from that. So that's what I've got so far. And then I have a couple of other slides I just want to share. I emailed you all about the low ceiling days.
Right.
And my take so far is there's really no rhyme or reason to it. They adjust their flight paths, they adjust to the ceilings. If I look at the ceiling at Bellingham, Orcas, and Friday, sometimes I can make sense of it because they'll start low, stay low, but then they'll climb depending on which direction they're going or where the ceilings are. But this one caught my eye because this gentleman, this is San Juan Air, again, flew out of Roche, and then just wound his way around every island, flying over water, mostly at 700 feet, because there was a ceiling that day of 1,200 feet at Friday and 1,400 at Orcas. And why he looped way down here, sort of towards Anacortes before he headed home and headed up into Bellingham, I have no idea. But that was sort of, this is the extreme of a flight path alteration due to low ceiling. Usually it's more subtle, like they fly over the lowest point on Lummi instead of over Otto or Constitution. But in general, when I've looked at those flights, it's like, oh, he's doing something a little different there that reflects the fact that there's a ceiling, I think. And I think I mentioned one time I saw a plane that actually climbed up through the ceiling and out on top at about 2,500 feet and flew over it. So I think, well, I have 2 thoughts about this. One is it'll be easier to get meaningful data about low ceiling days when we get into the fall and there's more of them. They're just too scattered now. And then the other, and this is where I need Greg and Lee to help me, but I assume that when there's a ceiling at 1,200 feet or 1,000 feet and they're flying at 700, they're pretty much doing what they're supposed to do. I assume they avoid going to IFR if at all possible. Is that correct, Greg?
What is IFR?
Instrument flying rules versus visual flying rules,
okay.
VFR.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would expect that.
Yeah. I mean, I think from a safety standpoint, they would make a case that staying under this ceiling and staying on visual rules where they can see everything is better, safer for their passengers than climbing up into the clouds. And although I assume all these planes are instrument equipped and the pilots are instrument rated. So I think it's kind of a special case, and we'll just have to sort of see what we see when there's more sampling to be done. But there haven't been that.
It's still a very odd flight path.
That one is. That one is.
You know, I can see going VFR and staying low and then coming on over the northern end of Lummi at the, you know, up toward the narrow
Yeah.
part there, make a lot more sense than the path he wound up taking.
Yeah.
He was sightseeing something.
Well, that was my other thought. And so the next slide, I think, kind of addresses that too, because this is a flight path on a clear day from San Juan Air, but I'm sure this was a sightseeing tour. It has to have been.
Yeah.
But again, mostly flying over water. But in this case, he was at 2,000 feet plus the whole time. So I just threw this in because I think, you know, it's important for us to recognize instances where they're really doing the right thing.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
To counterbalance when we think they're doing the wrong thing. So this is pretty polite as far as I'm concerned, staying out over the water and staying relatively high. But like I said, I'm sure that's a sightseeing tour. It didn't stop anywhere. And then last, looking ahead to a later agenda item, I had a couple of instances like this that just caught my eye when I was looking at ADSB. And I was really struck by the volume of air traffic over the islands, and particularly Lopez and those poor people at Blakely who probably don't derive any benefit from this flying, but they get an awful lot of overflights. And it just made me think that maybe before we start talking to people on other islands, we just give a little thought to where we think we're at relative to where they might be at. Because there are certainly times a day when I see, you know, a lot of flights over the course of several hours going over Lummi, but I never see anything quite like this cluster here. And of course, there's lots of destinations on the islands that are close together. There's seaplane traffic, which mercifully we don't have, but Kenmore Air out of Lake Washington flies into Orcas a lot, into Friday Harbor. So there's just and I think even the recreational private pilots are at this time of year are very active out over the islands. So, you know, at times it may seem like we're, you know, getting a lot of traffic, but I think there's times when comparatively maybe we're not. And I just think we should sort of keep that in mind.
Sure.
It could always be worse. And if you live in the wrong house on the south side of Friday Harbor, you just get buzzed, you know, all the time. Seaplanes on one side and
sure,
you know, land-based planes on the other. So anyway, that's what I got.
Great. Well, thank you. Gosh, thank you for doing all this. I've you know, I only tend to look at the software when a plane is going over, and I'm just curious because part of it is I'm trying to kind of train my eye better to understand, oh, that plane is, you know, before I started looking at this apps, I would have said, oh, that plane's at 600 feet. And clearly they were not, although there are some very low ones, but you know, I'm training my eye a lot better. So for me, a lot of times when I'm looking, it's to see, you know, where is that plane? So, and as I said, I've noticed there's a huge amount of traffic out over the islands for sure, and definitely over the water. And the Canadian Air Flight, you know, there's a aviation group and flying club, and they fly, I can hear them sometimes, but they don't actually fly over the island. They stay over the water. So that this whole area is definitely high volume for sure. And I appreciate your
I think it'll be really interesting to look at it. I mean, this is obviously not quantitative, just me saying, oh, that's an interesting scenario. I'll screen capture that. But I think, when we get into October, if we have some nice Indian summer weather, we'll see hopefully still a lot of clear days, but a lot of the summer vacation recreational traffic will be gone, and we'll sort of see more of that baseline of commuter traffic out to Friday and out to Orcas, and that'll be interesting to see. I mean, right now, I'm going to guess that roughly half the San Juan flights that I logged were on their regular schedule, which is what, 7:30, 8:30, and 3:30, right, out and back, and half weren't. As the tourism traffic falls back after Labor Day, and especially when it starts to get colder, maybe just all we see is the regularly scheduled flights and very few charters.
right.
But that's a guess.
So I did this, actually what I've been doing some sorting and papers and stuff, and I ran across a tally sheet that I had done last year, just randomly, because in the morning, of course, I have no idea what's going to happen that day for flights. And so I found a little sheet where I had tallied every time I heard a plane go over, just between the trees over my place. And that's the way I kind of judge. And last year, it was just kind of an average day from, when I started hearing them in the morning until, 10 o'clock at night or something. Sorry.
Oh, don't. I got one who's the same way. He's a Zoom cat.
You just woke up from a long nap, so she wants some attention.
I've got two that I'm surprised haven't visited yet. So,
and there was about, I don't have it in front of me, but I think there was about 35 planes that had gone over in a day. And so I thought, oh, I should do that again. So a couple days later, I just kept a little piece of paper and a pencil with me. And every time I was outside a lot that day too. So every time I heard a plane, I was gone for about a half an hour, but every time I heard a plane go over, right over here, I just put a little mark, and I got 36. So, and when I thought about it later, I thought, well, was that an average day? And I thought, well, it's kind of a typical day when they're, not a huge amount of traffic where I'm really closely paying attention, just having to stop all the time because there's a plane flying over. And that's only over 12 hours, that's only 3 an hour. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but when it goes all day long, it is kind of, and that's an average. Of course, they're not, there might be one between, 8 and 10 in the evening, if that. And so, so for me here, it's a frequency and then some of the lower, louder ones. I had this app on my phone about checking decibel levels. And I mentioned this, I think, in an email earlier, but there's a few that go over fairly low, and they're pretty quiet. They don't bother, like if they were all quiet like that, it wouldn't really be that big of a deal. And then there's a few that go over consistently or even just once in a while that seem pretty loud. So again, trying to train my ear. How loud is that?
no.
And some of them have been, usually when they really catch my attention like that, they're usually about 95 decibels, which is, I think, pretty loud.
Yeah, it is.
So I didn't know if that's something that, we could maybe start paying attention to a little bit. Those are unusual. Usually they're not, I'm not saying at all that most of the planes are that loud. There's just some that go over that are, when they're low and they're loud. That's what's distressing. There's some that fly, that are really loud, and they're at 2,500 feet, and they're still extraordinarily loud. So, like you
I
said,
know.
they're not doing anything wrong. It's just, it's kind of that annoyance level.
Imagine
I,
being in the cockpit and hearing that.
Well, I wonder about that, because,
I've ridden with San Juan Air and you can't, Pam was sitting right next to me and it was like, how you doing, honey?
they don't give
"I'm
you
good."
headphones?
Did they give us headphones? I'm not sure that they did,
Probably not.
but it still would have been loud.
Sure.
I rode in a Russian military helicopter a few years back, my only helicopter ride, and they gave us headphones, and it just meant it wasn't ear splitting, but you couldn't talk in that thing.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
I think part of the challenge for me is, we have, as I've watched ADSB, a lot of private planes go over, some other LLCs, flying clubs,
Mhm.
there's a Chuckanut Flying Club.
Right.
I see things that aren't just the name of an individual, but
Right.
some sort of organization.
Mhm.
But again, frequency is so low, at least I don't recognize them as being, oh, I saw them yesterday and I saw them the day before.
Right.
But when I've looked at ADSB, because a loud plane has gone overhead, it seems like it's pretty random what it is, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes it's one of
Yeah.
one of our favorite 8 planes in the 2 companies, but sometimes it's just some guy with a plane, and like you say, he's at 2,200 feet. I'm like, why is that so loud?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I guess Lee said last time, I think the turboprops are just intrinsically louder than the older sort of conventional
Mhm.
Cessna 172s. But I don't know. It may depend on what prop they have on. And is that true, Greg? The propeller makes some difference on the noise.
Yeah, pitch will do that. And depends on the prop and the wing or the end of the prop and the flex on the prop and multiple factors that contribute to the sound distribution.
Yeah.
You get on into, say, an old de Havilland Beaver, and de Havilland Beaver with a wood prop sitting at, one relative fixed. They don't have the same sort of adjustment. You're at a pretty much fixed prop end. Is going to be a little bit noisier than the guy who's got a modern adjustable prop. He's just going to be loud. And if they're climbing, doing any kind of climb, you're at a higher throttle level, so you're going to pick up that sound as well. So if I'm going even from 1,000 feet to 2,000 feet, that just little extra power push, you're going to pick it on up. So we're going to get sound. Sound is one of those things that, unfortunately, noise abatement and the likes, we're not going to get too far with.
Right.
Light levels, we will. And please find that one button that gives you that history track, because I know it exists because my guys send it to me, but I've never found it.
Yeah. I might be able to find it here. I'll just play with it a little bit while I'm.
But that was my whole intent with Skyglass, is, and the guy's still working on it, but he's got,
Okay.
it's one guy trying to do too many things.
Okay, so let's see. Let me turn this light on and see if you can see. No.
Actually, that did just the opposite. Much
Yeah,
light.
So when I look at the app here,
Mhm.
if I held it at an angle,
Yeah.
maybe you can see.
There you go.
There's these letters down the side,
Yep.
and I just would hit the K.
Okay.
So I basically toggled the K,
Okay.
and you see how it
Yeah, it shows the whole track.
shows
far
the
back.
whole track.
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
I will look at that. I will say, just because often I wait, I see one taking off from Bellingham, and maybe you haven't even heard it yet, but I see it's approaching Portage and something. I say, okay, I'm going to log this flight. And I just watch it come across. And I will say, most of the time, when those guys are flying at 16, 17, 1800
Mhm.
feet,
Mhm.
they've leveled off by the time they get to
Right.
us. They do their climbing out over the bay.
Yes,
Part of that is because they're not going very high.
right.
But and then when they're coming back, I would say, I don't think they start to descend. I don't know what descent does. It probably doesn't make it any louder, but I would say they start their descent about the time they clear portage. It depends a little bit on
Mhm.
what approach they're going to take into
Mhm.
BLI. Whether
Yeah,
they're going to, if there's enough wind, they'll go around to the north side of the airport and come down. And if it's light and variable, they'll just go straight in from the
Mhm.
south.
yeah, I've
So
noticed that too. And, you know, a lot of times they do tend to lift a little bit before they get to across the island, which I do really appreciate. So,
yeah, I mean, I think they're trying to maintain that, make sure they maintain that 1,000 feet over
yeah,
structure, the highest point on the land.
right, right.
Not that they always do, but you know, more often than not, they're
They're trying to.
trying. So,
I did have somebody asked me the other day about what we were learning about the planes, and she said, you know, I have noticed that she said, when the weather's really kind of decent, I go out to my hot tub at least once a day, and it seems like every time I do that, a plane goes over. And she
Well,
lives not that far from, kind of on the same track here, you know, across the island. So we had a laugh about that. And I said, well, there are, you know, I mean, some days I spend a lot of time outside puttering around my place, and I'll hear a plane approaching and I'll think, oh, that sounds like the one that's been going back and forth and back and forth. And I step under a tree. I feel like, you know, I feel exposed, you know, because I feel like, oh, they can tell if my car is here, my umbrella is up, if there's people milling about, or there's nobody here. I don't know. It just feels, you know, it just feels uncomfortable. Well,
I would, if that was a black helicopter, I'd really worry about it. This Cessna 172, I less concerned. For one thing, visibility straight down isn't very good.
right.
Like plane like that, you really
Well,
can't.
she laughed. She just laughed. She just said it was just funny because she said they can't see anything, but I'm sure, but it just felt awkward, you know, it just like she was just aware that every time she goes out to the hot tub, the plane goes over.
Much better than a drone flying over a hot tub.
Well, absolutely.
Talk about an invasion of privacy.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is an issue that sooner or later we are going to have to talk about and deal with, is those kind of drone flights here on island. You know, we get them around 4th of July, and we get some flying up and down Hales Passage, and, you know, over here on the other side as well. But somewhere along the line, you know, the regulations are really kind of nebulous out where we are. They're one thing in cities and near airports, but out where we are, it's a whole different ball game, and there is that invasion of privacy thing.
Well, you know, my son and I have had this conversation because he has a drone. He does photography, is one of his professions, and so he uses it primarily for that. And he's very sensitive to where he flies it. And he said, you know, we've had this conversation because he gets annoyed when a plane goes over, you know, at 300 feet. And he can take his drone up to 400 feet. And he has to sign something, you know, I mean, he has to swear, he had to get, you know, I don't know, I can't recall if I think it's a licensure thing that he goes through. And so, you know, it just kind of sends him when a plane goes over so low. Doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. You know, how does that guy get away with that? And if it hits my drone, I'm really going to be upset. So, but you know, like the land trust, there's no drones allowed over the land trust. So, I mean, you know, and enforcing it is another thing, but at least we've had that conversation. Unless it's Ed Lowe taking films, or somebody that we've given permission to, take pictures of the preserves.
Right.
Um,
One thing I don't know, I probably not so much here because the tree cover wouldn't allow it for a lot of properties, but when we put our house on the market in Southern California, they flew it, the realtor, put together all this AV
Mhm.
material to sell the house, and one of them was a 365 or 360-degree circle around the house from a drone. So you could see, could not just see the house, but kind of the
Sure.
surrounding neighborhood. And
Uh-huh.
I think I might have even did from a couple of different
Hmm.
altitudes, and it was pretty slick. But meanwhile, he was photographing my neighbor in her hot tub. So I mean,
Well, there you go.
maybe inadvertently, but so
Yeah. Yeah.
But there,
Well, there are-
listing,
pardon?
a hot listing.
Yes,
Hot
exactly.
listing.
But-
Well, those concerns, I actually have fewer about drones because I guess just because, I think this area, we don't have, I've only heard one that wasn't my son's. I have only heard one up over in this area, and it's been a while, and it was kind of down in front of me. It wasn't over my property. So I haven't really encountered them here so much, but I think it feels, I mean, if just even on next door, there's more and more of them being used out here that are by residents. So,
Yeah.
and certainly
they-
they're becoming
they got
kind of
some
a
great
dime a
stuff.
dozen. What's that?
They got some great stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, Robert Keller stuff and Ed stuff. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
video and still photography. So,
Well, this is one of the concerns I have about like electric aviation, because it'll be quieter. That's one of the things that has concerned me, that, hopefully they wouldn't be able to fly any lower, right? You're shaking your head because you think they'll have the same regulations.
No, they'll have different regulations, but they won't be quieter. Depends on what you wind on up with. There are systems on out there that I find 50% louder than normal combustion engines.
Really?
Yeah, because you wind up with more props. You have 4 props at a minimum, some 6, some 8. Depends on your configuration, depends on the prop, depends on the pitch. They don't have rotational pitch on most of those. It's a fixed pitch. So again, back to the older prop issue of noise, etc. You can't adjust your pitch as you're flying. The whole prop assembly moves, not just the blade.
I know this came up at the last meeting. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, you go on to the videos that are on out there of
Yeah.
any of these new big ones and listen.
Okay.
And there's a variety of things about sound, and they are not that much, some are quieter, but
Okay.
not much.
Okay.
I think you're going to have greater noise.
Oh, no.
but I think my best guess would be that, I mean, the 500 and 1,000 foot ceilings that the FAA sets are safety based. And so those should apply to any fixed wing
I
aircraft,
would hope so.
regardless of
Mhm.
mode of propulsion.
But
So,
then the question will be, are these going to be considered fixed wing? A helicopter isn't.
no, well, I haven't seen any of these, Greg. Are they drone like? Do they have,
Yes.
so they can
There
do
are
this?
yes, and there
Yes.
are as many different designs out there as you can shake a stick at. The race is on for who's going to get to the level of production.
Mhm.
That's the key. Who's got the one? The greatest problem they have right now is battery duration and flight distance.
Oh,
Until they get the motors such that they get more out of the motors, you have a weight load of batteries that restricts and limits your flight distance. That also restricts your altitude. That also restricts you on and on and on. So until we get a better battery or a better motor I expect that this is going to just hang, but I think because I'm a strong believer in Moore's Law, I watch how all the other tech has happened. Here we are doing this that imagine 20 years ago, can you imagine sitting at home, being live video like this? Oh, wow, you're super rich. I mean, seriously, this was something for the wealthy. I used to work at LA Air Station back in the 70s, and where everybody was talking about their new 4 or 5 function calculators before Texas Instruments even went crazy. My general officers, and I had 8 of them there, were all walking around with this thing we called sticks. And they were talking on these all the time. And we now know them as cell phones, the first iteration.
Right.
But we were that far ahead, 30 years on out. You're going to see the planes do the same sort of thing. LED bulbs. I was, 2000, year 2000. We were pushing hard for LED fluorescent replacements. The cost savings was going to be gargantuan. As a business, I was going to get out of working for the state and set up the business. We all heard it was going to happen. It didn't happen. Why didn't it happen? They had to adjust a few things. They had to gear on up for productivity. And it literally took them 15 plus years to get there. So first, we need that winning aircraft design in any of these gyro type things. And that's going to require, again, that battery distance thing. And then you got to gear up for production. So
So, yeah.
10 years.
Dave, there's a Nova show that you can Google it, or I've sent the link out.
Yeah, you sent out a thing about that. I haven't watched that yet. I should.
It's
check
pretty
that out.
interesting. I think it's
Yeah.
what, a year old, or it's not, maybe a year, 18 months old or something, but it kind of gives a little bit of overview of some of the designs that are being considered. And
Well, I'm gonna engage in some wild crystal ball gazing here and predict that what Greg is describing, aircraft with at least small commuter kind of capacity, 8, 10, 12 passenger, and that can do this as well as this. They're going to be New York City and Los Angeles they're going to be as thick as mosquitoes over those locations before we see one here, because the distances are short. The charging stations are easy to throw up. It'll just be, it may only be for the relatively well-to-do, but that's going to be the way to get from New Jersey to Manhattan, or from Manhattan to, Western Connecticut or something. That'll be the proving ground.
I think you're right, but I also think Lummi Island, if you look at our flight time and distance to Seattle,
yeah,
I can very much see Orcas Island, Lummi, all of the islands around out here, where I can live here, and yet I can fly from my front yard if I want. Right. There. Now, an important date to remember, and this is as crazy as it gets. I'll do one more prediction with you, Dave. July 31st of this year marked a historic day. It was the day George Jetson was born.
I saw that on the internet. I saw that. Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things in our future we don't know about. I still personally think that when the dark underbelly of electric vehicles and battery production and the environmental costs associated with that really gets exposed, I think we're going to be revisiting hydrogen power in a very significant way. Mm. Even if it takes a fission reactor to produce it, to produce the hydrogen, because it's light, zero emissions, tremendous bang for the buck, the kilocalories per whatever of hydrogen is just, it's, I think there's going to be kind of a renaissance and interest in that.
I'll go back to
Because,
Tesla's Pierce Arrow.
yeah,
Tesla had a Pierce Arrow. We ran on hydrogen.
yeah. So,
You know,
and if you think about it, I mean, aircraft, maybe that's a better place for hydrogen fuel than ground transportation. The chance of collision is less, greatly reduced. They're flying, plane full of gas or jet fuel is just a bomb waiting to go off anyway. How much worse would hydrogen be?
well, take it one step further. There are the generators today and conversions for a generator. And the amount of hydrogen you have stored at any time is really minuscule. It is not much at all. It is just constantly producing.
Right.
So in that particular instance, you don't have the same sort of explosive power that way. And you design it so that when it fractures, when anything goes wrong, the process immediately cuts. And that you're very much on to something there. That is, I think, coming back in a big way. I have one of the generators specifically that I have seen converted, and I'm really hemming and hawing, but seriously considering that's a viable option.
Mhm.
I've seen them run these generators on cups of water and one battery that gets it started. And once it's started, your alternator end is constantly charging it.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But we're headed there.
Interesting.
We took away and digressed and walked away and rabbit trailed and
That's okay. It's interesting. I love all this. So I do want to share what Lee sent me earlier. I was hoping he would be here. He sent which is similar to what you provided to the low flying aircraft complaints sheet, which I forwarded to you guys just a little bit ago after he sent it to me, and then a link. He also, there's an air show, an Arlington fly-in this weekend that he's going to. And so he's hoping to kind of chat with people, I think, and pilots, and just kind of schmooze and see. And also he made a contact, or he has an acquaintance named John Judge, who was a former Vietnam pilot, and then he was with the FAA. So he's going to be contacting him and wants to chat with him, hopefully by the next meeting that we have here. So that was kind of his big information. He didn't say anything about monitoring helicopters this month, but I took that as probably he didn't get to that, which is fine. Although I would imagine he noticed some of these low flying helicopters because they would have been hard to miss.
You couldn't miss that Border Patrol copter that came by on, I can't remember if there were successive days or there was a day in between, but
Yeah, they were pretty close. Yeah.
Very loud, very loud.
Yes. So you're thinking that it might be premature to call contact some of the other,
yeah.
just to kind of
Let's get into October. I think,
okay.
because we're all going to be experiencing this at this particular point where everybody's on up here, and you want to get into their radar of what's going on when everybody's down here, and then be a little bit more conversational at that point.
Yeah.
And I guess, Catherine, my caution was more,
Some
I
sensitive.
agree with Greg. There's really no hurry on this, but my thinking behind that was more, not that we don't contact them, but we just think a little bit about how we want to
Sure.
phrase our
Oh,
reach out.
absolutely. Yes,
For just a bunch of reasons. I mean, I
for
don't,
sure.
I would hate for them to come back and just turn into a pardon my French, a bitch fest, you know,
Sure,
on
sure.
their part. I mean, because that's not where we're
Sure.
coming from.
Right.
It's more, we're information gathering.
Yeah.
But, you know, if somebody on Blakely says, yes, and we want to start a class action lawsuit and we want you to join, you know, it's like, okay.
Oh, I
Well,
see.
the
Yeah.
number you've reached has just been disconnected.
Yes.
That's right.
But I think a little more thought on that.
Sure, sure.
Like the letters to any of the companies. I think I just feel like we're still in the information gathering
Okay.
stage, and I'm encouraged by some of the new opportunities, either with ADSB or other software that
Mhm.
might come into play here in terms of our ability to parse the data a little bit more.
Yes.
Mhm.
Instead of it's
Okay.
just me randomly grabbing what I can get. I mean, I love
Sure.
sitting in front of my computer, but it's crabbing season. I'm not going to do it all day, you know, every day.
Fair enough.
And I've resisted putting anything on my phone because I'm not really a phone person.
Yeah.
So and it wouldn't. I mean, the nice thing about the way I'm set up here is I go to ADSB, I get the info. If it's not open already, I pop open the spreadsheet, I pop the data in it. So there's no transcript, there's no opportunity for a transcription error or
Mhm.
anything like that.
Right. Yeah.
And that just works for me.
Okay.
And I think now that I'm sort of settled into the routine, I'd be happy to keep an eye out to see if there's any other players that I've
Yeah,
missed.
regular.
Yeah, right. Regular customers who
Right.
are having an impact on us. I'm not really aware of any, but I see. Well, I know who FedEx is.
Yeah, and
but
they
that's
tend to go around most of the time.
they tend to.
Yeah.
But there's
Tango.
a couple
There's
couple of
one
other
Tango, something, Julia Tango
yes,
or something that I've seen.
Julie Tango.
Yeah.
That's a couple, I think. Sounds like a one plane operation. I mean, when I do sort of catch a glimpse of somebody, sometimes I'll Google them up to try to get a sense of
Mhm.
what their business model is.
Mhm.
And right now, San Juan and Island Air stand out as, you know, these guys both have 4 planes. Actually, I think San Juan has 5 because I think Jason Douglas has a
Right.
5th plane registered in his name. That's
Right.
also flying commercially. So
Right.
I haven't really paid attention. Maybe I should to see if he's the maverick, right? But that seems to account for such a large fraction of the commercial
Mhm. Right.
traffic over us that
Yeah.
uh,
What I've no, yeah, sorry.
no, I was just going to say, I mean, if you know, if somebody buzzed my house at 500 feet and then did it again, they would quite literally be on my radar. But you know, that
Mhm.
hasn't happened to me.
Mhm. Right.
So I haven't singled anybody else out for monitoring at this point.
Sure. Sure.
Well,
Okay.
for you, I think the big thing out of tonight is for all of us, if you hear it and you get onto ADSB, click that K button.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now that in itself could be huge. It could show us a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Right.
The other thing I want to mention, Catherine, I think you mentioned this maybe in our first meeting, but you know, there are like 1 out of 20 flights that fly right overhead. It's not showing up on ADSB. So
Right.
their monitoring stations just didn't capture that plane. And I've also had them disappear,
Mhm.
you know, halfway to Friday Harbor, all of a sudden, poof, they're gone.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
sometimes
not,
I've seen that too. Yeah.
Alien.
ADSB picks up more, and sometimes I can switch over to flight radar 24, and sometimes it'll show up on there.
Well, Flight Radar 24 gets its data from ADSB.
Right, but sometimes it won't show up on one or the other.
Right.
So, and it kind of goes both ways, although usually something will be on ADS-B if it's not on.
Somebody,
the-
somebody clicks off their transponder.
Mhm.
Look, I got to tell you, just because we live here, Barnes Island, which I happen to be involved with as well. Barnes Island years ago had major drug running operation there, long
Oh,
time ago.
really?
Oh yeah, multi-million-dollar type drug running operation.
Well,
We are off and through international waters, and ships come through and stuff falls overboard here to be picked up by smaller boats, etc. That happens. We get flights here and there. There is that kind of thing. We are on the edge of international transportation, and that's why that helicopter and military and a variety of others keep an eyeball on out. So there are potentials for that stuff. So you see something that's really squirrely, just kind of put it away and we'll talk about it. But there's stuff
Don't
out
call
there.
the FAA, huh?
Well, you want to be careful with some of this stuff because
Yeah.
there is stuff out there. You know, it's the same as being along the Mexico border. We just happen to be on the northern end of that. And a lot of that stuff that comes on up through Mexico goes on up through Canada or from here into Canada and then transported on up all the way to Alaska. It's just a pipeline of stuff. Goes up highways, goes, you know, there's stuff on out between Linden and Sumas that blow your cookies away. And some of the cartels that are on up here, they're here. There are cartels, several working in Whatcom County. So, you know, you see stuff that really looks odd with some of the private planes. Note it,
good to know.
keep track of it, but there is stuff out there.
I assume when I report them to the FAA, it'll be an anonymous report.
That's a wise choice. Very wise choice.
I'll go use a payphone in downtown Bellingham if I can find one.
There you go. Okay, well, was there any, one other thing I was going to mention is, one thing I have noticed is that on ADS-B, that when, because you can kind of see where, like you've noticed, Dave, that you can see where Constitution is in the northern edge of the auto preserve and such. I've watched the planes go right over my place, and they might show up on ADS-B as being over auto as opposed to being over here.
Right.
So I don't know how accurate it is in that sense. So just to know. Of course, and I'm you know, really close to the north side of auto.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I had no idea what the lateral accuracy in X and Y of those.
I mean, it's not
paths.
wildly off, but you know, just in terms of those little map lines that are on there, I have noticed that.
When I started doing this and noting those crossing points, I mean, I was mostly interested in the difference between Point Migley,
Oh,
Auto,
sure. Yeah.
Carter Point, but then I started, you know, slicing and dicing it a little more. So Sunrise,
Sure.
yeah, Curry, not nearly as often. I mean, if you put what I note as Constitution or Auto, if you put them together, yeah, it's by far the most frequent crossing point
And
for Friday Harbor.
For Friday Harbor, yeah.
Not for Orcas, but for Friday Harbor.
So, sorry, Lee's not here, but Greg, maybe you know this. Private pilots have do they, in order to stay licensed, do they need to fly a certain number of hours per month or per year or something?
No. Biggest thing they have to do is keep up their health certificates, medical examinations. You get a little older, you get diabetic, you wind up with a variety of things. That'll kill you faster than anything else. Number of hours and consistency, no. There are guys who kept their medical and haven't flown in 20 years go get into a cockpit.
But there are the annual plane inspections, right?
Yes, yeah. Aircraft, yes. Pilots, no. Pilot inspection is, how's your body?
So, and then when they inspect the planes, I understood from the FAA that they check for noise at that during that inspection. Is there not a noise threshold?
Yeah, I don't know that.
I don't know. Lee would know better probably.
Okay, well, I'll ask next
I've
time.
had a couple of friends who were pilots, and I understood them to think that it was mostly mechanical and at
Okay.
least a cursory inspection of the airframe.
I think the comment was something like, well, we check for noise, but once it's in the air, there's nothing we can do about it.
No,
It's kind of along those lines.
it could be.
So,
I mean, Greg, does the engine on a Cessna 172 have some kind of muffler or noise abatement device on the exhaust?
Yeah.
No. So
Depends on
I mean,
what's on it.
yeah, I mean that
Yeah,
when you get your car inspected, at least in some, which I've lived in states where you do that, the muffler has to work,
Right,
or you fail inspection.
right. Well, it's the same sort of thing with an aircraft, but again, it depends on what you're doing. You know, it's like your car. You can put an expansion muffler on your car. The key is to not muffle sound as much as it is to break any kind of flame that's coming on off your engine as well. So that can be a big one. Depends on what you're doing. So I've seen 172s that were noisy as, a can full of rocks, and I've seen 172s that just purr like a sewing machine. So again, the biggest thing is they're looking for flight safety. Is it safe to fly? Are your cables good? Have is your lighting good? Is your everything else functional on the plane? And you got to have an annual inspection. And the annual inspection does not get performed by FAA. It has to be performed by a certified FAA mechanic. There's a huge difference.
Again, I wish Lee was here, but I'll ask Greg this if I can. Momentary brain cramp. What was I going to ask?
I call it sometimers.
Never mind. Next meeting, I'll write it down.
write it down.
Yeah.
I keep telling myself that, and we get to the storage, and why didn't I write that down?
I routinely leave the kitchen with a very focused single task to do on the computer, and I get halfway up the stairs and it's gone.
I resemble that remark.
Like I said, I have a great memory. It's just a little short. So, okay, you guys. Well, I'm glad you're having dinner tonight, Dave, instead of waiting till after.
Yeah, that was apps, but it was
that was appetizer.
Yeah, they were apps. But I'm not hungry. I don't know if I'm going to make dinner now or not. I'll have to decide when I get downstairs if I remember.
If you remember, yeah.
So,
Couple of hours from now.
So a couple sitting in their living room, nice evening, just wonderful on out. And the wife says to the husband, "You want some ice cream?" He says, "Yeah, that'd be great, but you better write it down." So I'm just going to the kitchen. Well, and off she goes. Half hour later, she comes back and she's got pancakes and she's got eggs and, got all kinds of stuff, and hands it to him, says, "How many times I got to tell you to write it down? You forgot the bacon."
There you go.
That's me in a few years. I'm almost there.
Yeah. So our next meeting will be on the 20th of September.
Oh, is that fungible, or are we pretty locked in because of other meetings?
No, we can talk about that. That's why I brought it up.
It's my only trip
Okay.
between now and Halloween, but that's our sailing week.
Oh, nice.
The week of the starting on the 18th. So it's right in the middle of that. And I really don't want to considering we'll probably be in Canadian cell phone space, you know.
No, no, no,
it's
no,
not-
no,
it's
no,
not
there's no,
happening.
not to worry.
Let's,
So,
okay, we're on the second Tuesday or third Tuesday?
Third. I
third
think.
Tuesday,
Okay, because the
Yeah.
second Tuesday I've got Leica.
right?
Right,
So let's move it 1 week out from the 20th, which would be the 27th.
Yeah, the
That-
27th is a little harder for me, but I can make that work if everyone else can make that.
Is that a Tuesday also? I don't have a calendar.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's,
Yes.
well, I don't,
27th is a Tuesday.
what's the future of public doc? Isn't that their Tuesday?
No,
Traditionally.
they are the.
I
mm,
thought they were the fourth Tuesday.
One moment, please. I will
Okay.
ask.
He's on both Zooms.
Yeah, Thursdays are also fine generally for me.
Yeah, Thursday's okay.
so
Yes,
you're
sir.
gone that whole week, Dave, the
Yes.
18th, okay. Is there any possibility we could do it the week earlier, like the 15th or something, that it's a Thursday?
Be fine with me. Isn't it? Wait a minute, I thought Thursday. Isn't Thursday the 16th?
No,
Huh. I gotta check my calendar. I thought I was boarding my sailboat on Friday the 17th.
Friday the 16th.
Oh, okay, never mind.
Don't miss your
Alright.
boarding.
Okay, that's fine. I know it's that Friday. That's right. I guess the sail date is Saturday the 17th. Okay. No, that would be fine. That Thursday would be fine. The Tuesday would be fine.
Thursday, the 15th works for me.
All right,
The only thing on my September calendar is Life Hack, which is, I believe that's the 10th. Isn't it? Or whatever the second Wednesday is.
I don't know. We got
right.
$41 million. You guys gonna have a job?
I'm not
Is-
on the committee, but I love to lurk and listen, so.
yes, Alan,
Okay. The public doc committee is the fourth Tuesday of the month.
Okay. Well, it's just I mean, for you guys, Alan and Greg, that's something of a potential conflict. So why don't we just make sure we miss that?
okay.
Let's, Alan, how does Thursday, the 15th work for you?
One moment, let me look.
One
And
moment.
we're talking September,
Yeah.
Yes,
Thursday, the 15th.
yes.
Let me access my calendar real quick. Mm. September 15th. The 15th works for me.
Yay.
Look at
Okay.
Dano, we're there.
All right, good. I'm gonna stop recording.
Okay.
Stop recording.
Okay.